Hey everybody, this is the Brothers Wisp number 51. Right out of the gate, it is July 22nd, 2017. Getting late in the summer. It is hot and miserable here in Texas. You step outside and you're dripping. It's like you're being wrapped in a hot, wet blanket. It's terrible.
Kate yesterday or the day before. Kate was in the Philippines where it's like never below 85 degrees. Yesterday, the day before, she said that she walked outside and it felt like death. I was like,
and that's Mike Hammett all the way up in Chicago, so that's pretty bad. If I'm all the way down in Texas and it's miserable, and it's still miserable up in Chicago, I don't know what to do then. We're screwed. What's the weather like all the way over there in Slovakia, Thomas Kernek?
It's miserable as well.
And not just because of all the power outages, right?
Oh yeah, that certainly doesn't help, but yeah, it's been way too hot lately here as well. We've been hitting 32, 33 degrees, that's Celsius. And all the Americans can go and put that into Google to find out what that is in Fahrenheit. I don't know. But yeah, it's extremely hot here.
Let's see. Celsius, 32 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit is about 89 degrees. That's nice. That's not so bad.
No, that's way too hot for us. That's like, yeah.
We've been averaging every day 38 degrees Celsius with about 60 to 70% humidity.
The problem here is that pretty much like 90% of buildings don't have AC because we haven't needed it up until now, really. So 90
degrees with no air conditioning. That sucks.
Yeah, that really sucks.
Yeah, that would be bad. How fun.
So, but yeah, you go pretty much anywhere, like restaurants or shopping malls or shops or anything, and it's just yeah.
Everybody smells really nice, I bet.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Excellent. All right, so let's kick it off. Let's see what we got. Mike put up, and a lot of this material you're going to find on the Brothers Wisp Facebook page. It's kind of where stuff falls out of Mike's head and lands. RF Elements link calculator for horns. They put up a nice little website. It looks like it's an early beta, but I guess you can do link calculations, path calculations. You could put in your horn specifics, I guess, kind of what degree it is and all that good stuff, and it'll hopefully tell you whether it works or not. Have you guys messed with it much? I just opened it up to see that it existed.
I just opened it up for the same reason right now. I was like, I shared that? Huh. I sure did. And they're like, oh, what is this? Let's take a look at it. I don't have time to look at everything I share.
Of course not. Of course not. Why would we fact check here? We're all about the fake news.
There's for those of you even too lazy to do that, it's a website, it's a Google Maps integration. Basically, you can plot your access point and your CPE on the map. You can then choose which of their horns you're using, what your transmit power is, what your antenna heights are, what your desired modulation is. Although I do see, noise floor. Yes, you can raise up for interference, interfrequency and some down tilt numbers. And it basically tells you how your signal is going to propagate out from that dish or that horn to help you figure out how much down tilt you actually need. It looks like up to 30 degrees of down or up tilt, I suppose.
That sounds so much fun. I can't wait to get in there and do that.
There's been a lot of people that have been complaining about, not knowing how to actually tilt these things. Because most actors, you just point straight out and you deal with it. But these you can do a lot more. I actually have a product that I'm working on trying to whip up to help people with their antenna alignments. And I was looking at building a page just like this. And yes, Tassos, I can find people to corroborate that I did have that idea before you made your website. So,
of course, they're all paid individuals, so it's like, how much can you trust them?
But if I ever come out with that, I don't know. It's been like a year since I thought of it, and I've been too busy to, 3D print one or anything. So we'll see if I ever do. Maybe I should just talk to Brian Vargas or somebody and just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of. You make it for me.
I have a 3D printer. Andrew Cox has a 3D printer. He's huge. He even owned a 3D printer company. You know people. I think you have few excuses.
But Cox is a little farther away.
Mm-hmm. Well, for now. Let's see. What else is on the block? This was something I thought was particularly interesting, and somebody else threw it our way. I wish I could shout out his name, but I can't remember off the top of my head. It looks like as of Ubiquiti firmware release 6.06, they've added some kind of a digital signature check to the firmware upgrade downgrade process. It looks like this is in an effort to stop people from migrating to the Cambium Elevate platform. Elevate was you load the Cambium firmware on a Ubiquiti device, and it would allow you to connect it to a Cambium AP, and this maybe is a bit of a stop to that. I'm sure there's a workaround. Yeah, as Mike says in the link here, there's a workaround available, but the easiest way is to not upgrade to 6.06 if you plan to go Elevate. Sounds pretty legit. You heard anything else on it, Mike?
Yeah, well, first, the guy that messaged us was Daniel Denson.
There you go.
I thought I'd posted before he messaged, maybe not, but this week's been pretty busy. Yeah, so of course, everybody's first reaction, and mine as well, was that it's solely to prevent people from elevating their radios, to Cambium's platform. But then after some time, I remembered that in the last set of FCC rule changes affecting the DFS channels 5.4 through 5.7, there was a requirement for securing the firmware, so that people couldn't load unauthorized firmware to circumvent the other requirements they have, that that they only allow people in the U.S. to choose frequencies that the radios are actually certified for. There's been a big problem with people taking MikroTik and Ubiquiti radios and running them on channels that they're not certified for, and then causing interference with airports and things like that, and that's generally bad. So there's been a problem for a long time. I keep seeing on the networking group on Facebook, every few days there's somebody posting a new screenshot of a radar somewhere that is showing the telltale signs of interference from some jackleg WISP running on the wrong channels. But anyway, so rambling. So it was actually an FCC requirement that they make their firmware secured.
Interesting.
And then that related into then remembering that there was a whole big discussion on all the tech news sites about how the FCC is killing DDWRT, since that's obviously not native to D-Link or Netgear, Linksys, whatever, that they're in effect killing that. And so there's been some back and forth about, no, that doesn't really kill it. Well, obviously it does, so on and so forth. But Ubiquiti says that, then later they came out and said, no, all we're trying to do is just comply with that new FCC requirement. And so I guess it's believable. Just seems terrible timing to comply with that just as cambium elevate is taking off. But the workaround to that is 6.0.6 beta. I'm guessing is a signed firmware that does not require a signed firmware to be loaded into it, if that makes any sense. So like before, there were of any kind and nothing was signed. Now 6.06 release is signed and requires signed firmware to update. So the beta version must be signed in that the current firmware allows it, but unsigned, but does not require signed firmware in that it will allow you then to install old firmware. Gotcha. I'm guessing it was kind of a safety built into the beta process, and you could roll back if you needed to.
Just in case. That makes sense.
And now that they proofed that out, they took it away because didn't need it anymore.
Fair enough. All right. So yeah, not everybody's out to get the competitor. Sometimes there's alternate things. That makes sense. Let's see. Something Mike ran into to much fanfare on the internet, which I think is hilarious. Said he was having issues with native VLANs and trunking to a VMware box, right? Was it VMware or Proxmox?
VMware.
VMware. Okay. So in a nutshell, you had an access port going to the VMware server, and you were able to access the management console just fine. You switched to trunk, set the native VLAN to basically what that access VLAN was set to. No more work.
Yes. And so I guess I'm going to kind of merge in one of my other topics on this list. That probably won't make the official published list. But so I asked in some Facebook groups about that. I'm not a big Cisco guy, so maybe I'm doing something wrong. And there's 14 posts of people telling me what I'm doing wrong. When what they're pointing out that I'm doing wrong is in the Cisco configuration guide. Like everyone's pointing out that I can't have access VLAN defined if I'm doing a trunk. And like the config guide says you can do it.
Yeah,
it says it's optional.
It just doesn't use it. Yeah, it just sits there.
Yeah. And then finally somebody chimed in and said, "Hey, you can do that," but nobody's looking at the actual problem. They're just seeing that and stopping. And so then I got into a spirited discussion with Kevin Myers of IP Architects about what's going on, and he pointed out that VMware's publications, when he linked to his source, that on a VMware port group, which is basically what they're using to bundle multiple physical port network interfaces into the virtual switch, that on that I can't have both tagged and untagged at the same time. It just won't work. Like the untagged will refuse to work. And I found issue with that because obviously it was working, because the access VLAN is clearly untagged and the VMware configuration didn't change when I moved it to the native VLAN. And so we went back and forth quite a few times, and as any internet discussions. And I intended on changing it to an actual tagged port to fix the problem, but we could not get. Kate just walked over and making faces. But Lost my.
So this is the part where you were gonna say Kevin Myers
yeah.
was right. That's what you're gonna. That's what you're about to say.
Well, I mean, he was right, although he did publish, then post later like he did say. Actually, I talked to somebody else, and it's not exactly what it says. You can do some other things, but while he was right in that VMware says that doesn't change the fact that it still works with the switch set to access port. Like, per their document, it shouldn't work at all if you have tagged and untagged on the same, virtual switch. VMware. It shouldn't work at all, but yet it did. So somehow VMware is able to distinguish an access port VLAN from a native untagged VLAN.
Well, they're probably I'm assuming it's CDP aware and is so it's just it realizes whenever you're trunking over to it, it's seeing VLAN tags, and then two Cisco switches together can determine that there's an inconsistent native VLAN. If their native VLAN is different on both trunk ports, you'll start getting error messages. Not that it's necessarily a problem or an error, it's just kind of a warning. So it means they're communicating that information across. So VMware must be looking at that and saying, oh crap, he's trunking to me. I will refuse to any longer send any untagged traffic over there, something like that. Or I don't know, maybe there's a checkbox somewhere.
Yeah, I even tried to, restrict the allowed VLANs to just the one that the native VLAN was, to prevent, any other possible tagged VLAN, chatter going into the box. And
so long story short, you switched your management VLAN to the VLAN you actually wanted it to be on, right?
Yeah, I just made it a tagged VLAN. I like having untagged VLANs for, when the stuff hits the fan, but I've never had it hit the fan where that would have helped me. So, okay, fine. Mm-hmm. And I guess next week we'll be putting in 10 gig interfaces and probably won't matter anyway.
There you
because
go.
I'll just move the management back to its own interface.
Just so you can win. I get it. That makes sense. All right, so last week I was complaining about how I had this really long multi-mode run that there's not a whole lot I can do about it. I'm stuck with it. I actually got some 40-kilometer optics, some single-mode 40 kilometers from Fiber Store. I think I paid like $12 a piece for them. I mean, they're dirt cheap. They're awesome. And those long-haul interfaces, they actually give you a little bit more transmit power, but better receive sensitivity. Anyway, they have DOMs on those guys, so I could actually see on my switches on either side the light levels. And I want to say the warning threshold was neg 21 on those optics, and I was getting received signals of like neg 10. So I mean, it was well within range. I mean, it was right there in the sweet spot actually. So both of them had decent light levels, but they wouldn't link up. I guess maybe there's too much dispersion or something on the fiber. I mean, there's multiple multi-mode patches in between that I don't control any of that stuff. So I am using mode conditioning patch cables on the very ends, but I guess whenever it hits one of those couplers, those connections, it just does whatever it wants. So I even tried doing microticks. Microticks wouldn't link up. I tried TP-Link media converters, and believe it or not, they linked up. They actually came up, but it still wouldn't pass any traffic. So I guess they just, whatever intelligence is in those media converters that said, hey, the light levels are good enough, go ahead and link up. But yeah, it wouldn't pass anything. So last ditch effort, I ordered some optics off of eBay, some 2-kilometer multi-mode optics. These guys actually run in 1310 nanometer, which is usually what you see shorter range single mode stuff running in. So these things, I know this link is over 2 kilometers. They're only 100 meg interfaces, but fingers crossed. This is my Hail Mary. If this doesn't work, I'll just have to try and figure something else out, I guess. So we'll see what happens.
It I can't think of what it's called because the video was so long and I was just listening to it on a drive. But they're in one of the Nanog videos that I shared on the Facebook page from the last Nanog, Richard, and I can't pronounce his last name, Stinger, people, whatever, doesn't matter. Look for Nanog, I think 70 videos from the guy from Packet Fabric. He spends like 2.5 hours talking about optics. The same way that we talk about wireless. He's talking about, different polarities. He's talking about the amounts of loss. He's talking about, other things I can't remember. Modulation levels and channel widths and all this stuff, how it applies to the optical world. There was something he talked about in there that I think would explain why you see enough light but can't link, and I don't remember what it is. But I think that the new coherent optics would sort that out.
Yeah, I did a little Googling when you talked about the coherent optics. I actually started looking around, and the closest thing I could find is some 10 gig optics and 100 gig optics being made with coherent. I wasn't seeing anything like 1 gig or 100. That's like a very future type. I need a good 15 megs to this site. So there's no way it would make sense to put out gear that could do 100 gigs just to get the coherent. I mean, I don't need it that bad. I've got a wireless shot over this.
I mean, not even fix the problem.
Yeah, true story. Well, I mean, this is really old multi-mode fiber. Honestly, it was. I don't know. I don't even want to get into it. It's just so exhausting to think about. So who knows what'll happen.
Let this be a lesson to everyone watching. Do not deploy multi-mode anywhere for any reason.
I use it in the data center. Device to device. It works well.
That would for the really short stuff, DACs are cheaper. For the medium length stuff or the medium performance stuff, there's no significant price anymore. 10 gig multi-mode, 10 gig single mode, same price on Fiber Store. $36, I think.
I'd say certainly if you're going outside, if you're outdoors in any form or fashion, never use multi-mode again. If you're inside, I mean, if you're going rack to rack, who cares what you're using? It doesn't matter.
Or even if you may do outdoor things, like if you're strictly a data center company, then it's a little more acceptable. But if you do things that may go outside where you would need single mode, then that means double the stocking of cross connects or patch cables, double the stocking of optics, double stocking of whatever else is involved.
Oh, yeah, we do multi-mode rack to rack, just like between routers and stuff like that. But if it's going from a carrier to a customer or from us to a customer, like a cross connect, it's single mode only. Virtually every data center these days is standardized on single mode. Every carrier, whenever you order a cross connect, they're going to stick a single mode optic. That's what it's just all of their techs only stock single mode. You know what I mean? They only stock single mode jumpers. So it's the same thing across the board. They never think about it. So that's what you're going to get in a data center. But in your own racks, I have no problems with anybody using multi-mode. Just never do it outside. This was way back in the dark ages when this stuff was put in. All right. Let me see. I had one quick thing to mention before we go down this mic rabbit hole of alphabet soup he's got in here. I did a quick job for a fella named it was two guys. It was Bob and Chuck. Really interesting, sharp guys. It was fun. It was kind of do configs, go through their stuff, and sort of a loose training session. And it's funny, whenever you're sort of going through a config with somebody who's fairly competent, but maybe hasn't been using MikroTik that long. It's funny, some of the things we take for granted that really surprised them. You've just been using it for so long. One of those was Mac Telnet. They didn't understand. They had no idea what Mac Telnet was. It's like, yeah, you can connect to it even without an IP. If you lose your IP, you can still connect in. They're like, oh my gosh, seriously? Yeah, right. And so it's funny. I'd challenge some of you guys to kind of rubber duck, do some stuff with some newbies soon. Just go through and say, hey, this is Torch, this is how you use it. This is Roman, this is blah, 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 blah. You'd be surprised how many of those things these folks have never heard of, right? It's just something you do all the time and take for granted. That's all I had. All right, Mike, let's beat it up. You've got LTE questions. What is that?
So that was also connected to my item in here about Facebook groups. But more, so we've seen vendors and WISPs, and the vendors are resharing the things that WISPs are sending them. Some of their LTE links that they're getting, and how it's just simply unheard of, and I don't doubt what they're saying at all about getting able to about being able to do 30, 40 megs through 2 miles of trees across a 10-mile link or something like that.
Oh yeah, it cures cancer if you rub it on your teeth, whitens them, and brought your dog back to life, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that it does what the WISPs are saying that it does.
Yeah.
But my thing is that, okay, so on a Ubiquiti, setup, because you can install that meg, 85 customer that pulls 7 megs, doesn't mean that you should, because he's going to drag down the entire access point. LTE has mechanisms in it to help mitigate the damage that those people can do to the sector as a whole. But what that just means is that when that sector fills up, he's going to get punished severely for his bad RF situation. And, maybe he's end up throwing, the air link slows down. And maybe that's better than what he had. But what I'm looking for, and I know once you get into the non-line of sight world, there's a million variables. But what I'm trying to find is people can send in pictures of links that they've done with LTE gear. Be sure to note what frequency it's in, because that kind of matters, and power levels. But looking for LTE links that are going through some trees and stuff. Maybe have some terrain situations, but are still close to full modulation. I'm trying to see how much of this stuff we can go through and still get close to full modulation. Maybe it's just to see how much we can push the technology, how much we can push the platform before it really starts to hurt the system as a whole.
Well, I want to not just see that, but I want to see that configuration, and then give me an idea of performance over time. Different seasons, different weather conditions. What does it look like? Is it great in the winter when there's no leaves on the trees, but then in the summer when everything's nice and thick and green, it goes to pot? What's going on? That's what I want to hear too.
Yeah, and if you can get aerial pictures that kind of show us what the vegetation's like. If you can show us I think Google Earth calls it a path profile or something like that, where you're showing a cross section of here's the tower, here's the CPE, showing all the terrain in between, so we can gauge what the terrain's like, what the tower height differences are, kind of get put some information in for some of these non-line of sight variables.
Gotcha. So imagine for some of the folks on here, they're not super familiar with LTE. When you say LTE, they're just thinking cell carriers and things like that. What are you actually talking about, Mike?
There are manufacturers making LTE gear focused for the fixed market. There was similar stuff done in the WiMAX day. In the LTE world now, there's keep it a little bit closer to standards, so that if you happen to be in a band where you get some roaming users, maybe you could get some roaming handsets. But it's people like Bicel, Telrad, Huawei. I'm sure there's others that I just can't think of right now.
Those are the only ones I ever hear about.
That are making LTE gear at lower price points, with the back end ecosystems more designed for a fixed environment. Because a lot of that stuff is completely unnecessary for a WISP, or for a fixed installation. You don't need to worry about roaming if you're only installing fixed hardware. But there's a lot of advantages in the LTE platform that help, kind of reconstruct signals in poor environments. And a lot of it in some of these bands is simply lack of noise. But there's a lot of benefit in some of these areas to the LTE protocol running in 2.5 gigahertz, running in 3.65 gigahertz. And there's a lot of manufacturers that are producing this LTE 365 gear that are pulling out longer links at higher capacity through foliage than 900 megahertz. And you typically think 900 megahertz, lower the frequencies, which you need to go through trees, but these guys are making it happen. And so I'm just trying to gauge, how far can we go without compromising the system, capacity,
Yeah. And so it's going to be, I think a lot of people hearing you say non-line of sight and they can actually link up and be solid. It's a reality, right? It's not kind of a pipe dream. Mileage may vary though, right?
Yeah. And I know, there's a WISP near me that due to the foliage, they have something ridiculous. They've got like 15, I think, cambium 900 access points on one tower, just with different antennas pointing different directions. But it's a crapshoot because the 100 megahertz band is so full of interference, and there's such a small space, you can't really get much throughput.
Yeah. If there's a municipality that happens to be using it, that stuff carries like crazy.
Yeah, smart meters of different kinds.
Mm-hmm.
Even though paging towers can be are outside of the band, just the fact that they're hundreds or thousands of watts compared to your 1 or 2 watts, they'll blow you out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And these other bands are quiet.
Yeah. All right. And so something else to think about is anytime you hear there's a potential silver bullet, it comes with a catch, right? And so one of those catches is going to be price. So if you're used to buying Ubiquiti APs and tossing them up on a house and you're just blowing and going, it's very different. What's a CPE ballpark, you reckon?
The CPEs aren't too bad, and those are actually expected to come down into the price ranges that we're used to. But they're $200.
Couple hundred bucks. What's an AP look like?
Between 3,000 and 7,000.
Okay, so that's where you're going to get. And then, kind of
for an AP that only has 100 megs of throughput.
Okay, it's not a tremendous amount, but it's sort of a shift in engineering as well, isn't there? And I'm probably completely off, but isn't there like a packet core where all the clients actually tunnel back to this packet core, which is going to be like a server, and then they pop out of the network. So it's like different.
Yeah. It's there's totally different network, backhaul capacity, quality configurations. It does make diverse networks with multiple inroads a little more complicated. Actually, some of them now can't do bridging; they can only do NAT. So you can't actually put like a customer can't have their own router with a public IP. And I think one of the platforms actually by default is a double NAT because it NATs somewhere in the infrastructure and then NATs later in the infrastructure. And it's not the greatest, but it's still pretty young for these companies to be taking something targeted towards cell phones and using it in our space.
Yeah, so much so that like the CPEs, they have SIM cards in them, right?
Yeah, it's and it's you can you buy 50 or 100 SIM cards from your platform manufacturer, and then you can buy your CPE from one of a few different companies, and you just pop the SIM card in, and just like what we've seen in some of these other platforms, it may need a manual configuration, it may auto accept SIM cards from that manufacturer. There's a whole array of authentication systems, and we could probably talk for an hour on this, and we don't even know what we're talking about. I mean, I haven't looked at any of it. So, Justin Wilson's he's got 3 or 4 or 5 clients that have different platforms out there. And so, he would know a lot more about what's involved in actual hands-on deployment. But it's, it's a totally different world. But, I am looking at it in a few areas where there's WISPs, they're doing a poor job to, overbuild and try to get through some of that foliage.
Yeah.
But it may be too expensive. It may not do what I want. So I may not. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine people like in East Texas out in the piney woods, like here where I'm at, if you have trees, usually you can put a mast on top of a roof and you'll be able to get line of sight. But those guys, I mean, they have 100-foot pine trees across, everywhere. You're lucky if you can see much sky at all when you look up. So those guys, I mean, that's, 5.8, line of sight, that's not an option for them.
And to, I guess, put some geographic scale on that, you're saying East Texas, when in reality, you're still in the eastern quarter of the state.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still drive for 20 hours west and still be inside Texas.
I'm talking, look at like Kennard, Texas. I have kinfolk that live out there. That's near the Davy Crockett National Forest. And man, it is nothing but pine trees, 100-foot tall everywhere.
Well, I mean, being a national forest there, you're probably going to have some trees.
Yeah, anywhere out that way, all from Crockett to Nacogdoches to Kennard, all these little BFU places, man. It's just nothing but pine trees.
I'm looking at the map and I'm seeing these towns and I'm like, I'm waiting for you to, because I don't know.
Nacogdoches. That's the oldest town in Texas, brother. I was born there. But no, it's funny driving through those towns. Like you'll see like a back seat of a car sitting on somebody's porch, and they're just hanging out. And the speed limit's 75, but everybody drives 55 because it's like out there, you got nowhere to go and nothing to do when you get there, so you kind of just don't care. And I mean, that's sort of the mentality. There's not many people that live out there. There's about 4 or 5 family names that have been there for the last 200 years. So there's a lot of intermingling of the same family, I'm assuming. I come from good stock. That's what I'm getting at. Let's move on past that.
How's the licensing for LTE frequencies for you guys?
I know 365 is not terrible doing that. That's the only bands I've ever sort of dealt with on the licensing side.
But if you want to deploy LTE, you have to get a license, right, for certain frequency band?
I think so. I don't think you can run it on the regular stuff, can you, Mike?
In the United States, you can use 3.65 gigahertz that requires a light license, and it's basically, it's a non-exclusive license. So they're, they've stopped making those because they're transitioning to a whole new regulatory model in that band. But when they were available, they were $50, $200, something like that. And
for a zip code or for a how do you license those?
I mean, it's basically just it's a non-exclusive nationwide license. It's basically just
okay.
About
that's yeah.
I mean, there's no priority rights over certain bands or anything like that. It just keeps out consumers. so you don't have baby monitors and stuff running in it.
I think I mentioned this on one of our previous casts, but for us in Slovakia, LTE is as a little, ISP, and I mean, even as a big ISP, it doesn't matter as long as you are not like a nationwide carrier or a nationwide telephony provider. It's pretty much impossible to get any LTE licenses. It's just completely locked down by the big guys, and it's just useless for us.
I suppose that could be a bit of one of the other things I have on the menu here. FCC 3550 to 3700 megahertz. Currently, in that band, it goes from 3650 to 3700. But they've recently, a few years ago, they proposed lowering it 100 megahertz down to 3550, and then changing it to a dynamic allocation model where there's a server at one of several companies, Google being one of them. You can choose which company you work with, assuming your hardware does, work with them as well. But since there's some military use in those bands, is why it was unavailable before. They're doing is that they're doing, RF plots from some of the other protected, Earth stations and things, and the military is feeding in, kind of when and where they're using the spectrum dynamically. And so it allows for opportunistic use of spectrum that we could otherwise not have. And it's transitioning away from this non-exclusive nationwide license to there are 7 10 megahertz licenses that you can buy up to. Is a bidding process, but it's on a much smaller geographic scale than normal. Normally the big cellular guys are buying their spectrum, one of several different, measures, market-based measures, but there's only 500 or 2,000 of those across the country. So it's reasonable for them to bid on all of them. The new way is going to be based on census tract. And so there are literally hundreds of thousands or millions of those in the country. Each town could have, like a town of 30,000 could possibly have a dozen census tracts in it. So it's really going to limit the reach of the nationwide guys, and each person's only allowed to have so many licenses. But the remainder of the band will be unlicensed. It's really weird how they're doing everything dynamically. You don't own a chunk of spectrum. You won't. If you win a license, you win it for 10 megahertz, but you don't win 3550 to 3560. You just win 10 megahertz. And if military or something comes in, they move you somewhere else. So your year will change what channel it uses when the government tells it to change channels. So then that's the first time where small guys could afford a license. And this is supposed to go into effect, like production equipment, I think by the end of the year. This has been probably 6-7 years in the process. WISP has been fighting for us a lot. And just this month, the Mobile Telephone Trade Association and T-Mobile made petitions to totally change how that works. Like,
of course they
the
did.
FCC's already decided. There's associations just hammering up little interconnection details with the databases, and the technical components, not the regulatory components. And T-Mobile comes in and says, "Yeah, we want to change how all this works, make it big cellular guy friendly." And so there's an FCC petition, filing period now through Monday or Tuesday, maybe, for people to go there and basically say, no, don't do whatever they're saying they're going to do. My little ISP needs this to deploy. We're already working on the rules, so on and so forth. Hopefully T-Mobile doesn't screw everything up. But if they don't, then by the end of the year, it should be feasible for a WISP to buy some licensed spectrum.
All right, so is there a link that you maybe can add to the show notes?
Maybe.
People can drop that and check it out. All right, cool. You also had something about FCC 3700 to 4200. What's that about?
Another, so that original 3650 to 3700 has been there for over 10 years. Mimosa and a few others put together a petition to FCC in the past month or two to extend this 3700 to 4200, make that available opportunistically to WISPs. They don't have military users in that band so much as there is some satellite to ground communications, like the old C-band TVs, like those 12-foot TV dishes that people had. They use those to feed cable stations back in the day. Most cable stations have moved to fiber-based backhaul. They don't need all these. Most of them don't exist. Most of these registered locations. And so Mimosa is saying, hey, can we get that freed up for WISP use? That's 500 more megahertz of spectrum that we could use. And I don't know if there's an official comment period opened up for that or not. I'll try to find one. But it's definitely an opportunity to take advantage of some of the existing technical work, some of the existing equipment, and tack on another 500 megahertz of available spectrum.
Gotcha.
Just proposed, so there's not a lot of details, unlike the other one. It's been 8 years in the process.
Gotcha. So if the opportunistic thing for the 365 band goes into place, you said this year, how long do you think before some of these manufacturers are actually going to support it?
I would expect the LTE guys to support it within weeks, months, because the gear that they're using should already support that. They just can't legally use it yet.
You're talking about the frequency range, right?
Yeah.
So they should actually be able to communicate, but then the software piece, right? So that the server can talk to them and they dynamically change.
I believe most of the manufacturers that would be looking at this space have somebody on the association that's hammering out all of the technical pieces of that, database back-end stuff. So, I can't imagine it's more than a few weeks or a couple months after, they have all their work finalized that, we could use that other 100 megahertz.
That's cool.
Cambium's 450 platform should support it. Ubiquiti's AirFiber 3 could probably support it. The AirMax, no way. Anybody that's used a MikroTik 365 card, no way. Maybe some of the older WiMAX platforms, but probably not, because they're probably not getting a lot of development attention anymore.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that if you've been deploying new 365 gear that's not MikroTik or Ubiquiti, some of Ubiquiti, that you can probably take advantage of that.
That's cool. Soon. All right. So I have a feeling Thomas is about to fall asleep, so let's get him to talk a little bit. We were talking about it last time. Thomas, you were excited about it. MikroTik's big bridging change. They were prepping it for release candidate 640, and it was where it would take the all of the switching functionality and just throw it into bridge. If you added a bridge and the hardware was there, it would take advantage of it. What happened to that in the release? I don't see it.
So, yeah, all of the new bridging implementation was completely pulled from .40 RC. MikroTik was saying that they are just about to release 6.40, so it's scheduled to be released and ready to be released, and they did not want to, the bridging implementation wasn't quite ready to be released to the public in a proper release, so it was completely removed. Right now it's not available in any currently downloadable MikroTik router OS build. And they said they will reintroduce it sometimes in RC for 6.41.
All right, so they just delayed it one cycle is what it looks like.
It seems, for now.
All right. You still excited about it? Still hopeful?
Yeah, definitely hoping to see it as soon as possible. But of course, yeah, I completely understand that they need to get it stable and get it to not possibly break people's networks in some extreme conditions. So.
What are you saying, Mike?
Yeah, because you downloaded a copy of that RC once it was available and played around with it a little bit, didn't you?
Yeah, immediately when that came out, I got that, played with it, and we described it in the last podcast, I think, for anybody who wants to listen to that. And the fast summary on that is that it was pretty good. It behaved nicely for me. It configured nicely, and yeah, I'm still looking forward to it. So we'll see whatever MikroTik has the plans for RC for 41.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to somebody. I was like, yeah, so, you can do this under the master port and then this over here and this over here. I was like, but I don't know if I would bother learning that too well because they're about to completely change how all that works. So just, wait a couple months. While we're talking about Thomas, in big bold letters at the bottom, it says Unimus 1.0. What does that have to do with anything?
So yay, we have 1.0 out. It's would be considered a stable production-grade, production-ready release. It went out last week, and so far we actually have gotten no bugs or no things that don't work in it. So it seems that calling it production-ready was justified. So yeah. We are very excited, and we are, already working on some new other things, and this just marks a big transition from the beta phase into proper, release production grade phase.
That's killer. Now you're done. You don't have to ever touch it again.
No, not at all.
There you go.
We still have so many things to do.
But so I should probably send you some money sometime for all the licenses that I'm chewing up.
So yeah, there's actually for all the people that are still using testing licenses and beta licenses, we have a big migration plan that's outlined on the forums. There are posts and threads on how we are handling all of that. So if by chance, yeah. But yeah, so we are thinking what to do forward. Actually, we are considering doing two separate release branches, like a bug fix release and a latest feature release kind of a thing. We don't know yet. Our releases for the last, I would like to say, almost half a year at this point have been pretty stable. We haven't managed to introduce any major bugs or break any major things. But so we'll probably be collecting feedback over the next few months on how to proceed further. If people are interested even in a stable and feature release branches and all of that. So we'll see.
It's killer, man. All right, guys, it looks like we've reached the bottom of the list. We've hit about an hour. This is usually the part where we wrap it up. Do you guys have anything additional you want to chunk out there, or should we close it up?
5 to 10 seconds. So WISPs, if you don't know, and it may have already passed for all I know, the FCC had a comment period for net neutrality stuff. If you care one way or the other about that, you should post. And I will limit my conversation on that to that.
Fair enough. Yeah, go take a look, guys. I'm sure this is This is like debating religion, I guess, on the amongst ISPs. It's very polarizing.
Yeah, and Tom Smith's not here to discuss, so there's really. If Tom Smith was here, I would gladly talk on that for 3 hours.
That needs to be its own dedicated podcast. Just you and Tom going toe to toe. That'd be fun. No, it wouldn't be fun. It would be funny, but I don't know.
I guess much like on our discussions about what Tom's out doing now, going to a U2 concert. I don't find that entertaining at all. And, we talk quite some time about that too.
Yeah, I think he's like the same age as me, but somehow he's 50. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, Tom's an old man. Well, I guess it's probably because it's the only decent Irish export, I suppose.
I don't know. There was that famine, and we got a whole bunch of good Irish people.
If Tom watches this podcast, when he reacts.
Oh, he doesn't watch this.
That's why I said that. To gauge it. See, say something that's going to really irritate Tom, so that way, I won't say anything in our Slack chat. Just wait for him to watch it and react.
Shots fired, man. All right, Thomas, if people are going to grab you on the interwebs. What you got?
5 to 10 seconds. MikroTik. Where is the gig wireless thingy? The 24 gig.
The 60 gig stuff?
The 60 gig, I mean, yeah. Where's the 60 gig stuff? I need that thing in my life.
Yeah, I was waiting on that too. I saw they put some of their LTE stuff up, and some of their long haul 5 or whatever.
Yeah, there was a couple of new introductions. There was also actually what we didn't talk about. There is the old 10 gig CRS that came out, and LTE, Web LTE, and a few new MikroTik products came out. Yeah. But yeah, where's the 60 gig stuff?
I have no idea. I'm anxiously awaiting that. I've got a project probably in the next 3 months where I'm going to have to use the IgniteNet stuff if the MikroTik stuff doesn't come out. And I wanted to actually give it a try. So
yeah, we've got multiple links coming in the very near future as well that we could really use it.
Sweet action. All right. So Thomas, people want to get a hold of you. They're desperate. They need to get them a piece of the I don't know where I was going with that. Just let them know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, just Google for me. If you want to get a piece of me, just Google for me. Yeah.
They can hit you over on the Unimuses.
Yeah, you can find me on all the major social networks pretty much. YouTube, if you want to see some of my presentations and other things. And yeah, Unimus.net and our forums and Unimus Facebook. I hang around all those. I'm pretty easy to find, so if somebody wants to find me, I think it's quite easy.
All right, sweet action. So all of the lovely Facebook updates, well, I would say 99.99% of them come from Mike. So honestly, if you want to get Mike, you get him on Facebook. But if not on Facebook, is there any other outlet you'd like people to grab a hold of yet, Mike?
No. Just Google, look for your social platform of choice, and I'm on several. But Facebook's just the most convenient, I suppose, because I'm slaving away at old Brothers Wisp's content. I'm there, so Facebook, sure.
Will do. If you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me via my blog, gregsoul.com, where I very occasionally do stuff there. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. I've been really busy with some new Linda content. Just as soon as I feel like I'm going to die, I get over the hump and I will turn in some content, and then foolishly I will sign a contract for another course. So I'm ever doing that. So I haven't been doing nearly as much consulting. It seems like whenever I do some of the stuff, I enjoy it though. I know it's really tedious and burdensome, but then, I'll get a couple of really good guys that are really just looking to learn, and I don't know, it's kind of refreshing. So you never know. Reach out to me. I might be able to help you. I guess the usual, keep giving us questions, comments, keep sending us tips. It's always helpful. Knowing what you guys want to hear about is tremendous. There's a lot of burdens of knowledge we have, which is we just assume everybody understands all the same things we do. So if there's any gaps in your knowledge, let us know about it so we can fill them in. Hit us on Facebook, facebook.com/TheBrothersWISP. If you're old school, it's contact us at TheBrothersWISP.com. Other than that, thanks, guys.
See ya.
If you are very old school, I think Tom announced his postal address in one of the previous blogs. So if somebody wants to go and dig through that, then
Yeah, you have to open up a can of beer and then put the note in there and then seal it shut. Otherwise, you're never gonna see it, though. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.